I'm going to show you how to make gloves on the 56 peg 1/4 inch gauge Cindy wood loom. And for the most part you're just doing a flat knit is all you're doing, and only until you get to the base do you actually do some decreasing and some purling to have a nice edging. And the most complicated thing about the glove are the fingers. The thumb's pretty easy. It's a set of short rows and you end up sewing. And the fingers you do end up sewing. And the great thing is when you're done and you sew it, which is a trick. There's a trick to this. When you sew it, you put on the glove and you hardly know it's there. So I'm going to show you how to do the fingers because that's where we start, and then work our way down. So I've kind of rubber banded the gloves to give you an idea on the fingers, and you'll notice that the rubber band is overlapping by 2 everywhere, and there is a reason for that. You need the width for the fingers. You don't want the fingers to be too tight. You want them to feel comfortable. So if you have narrower fingers, then only do an overlap by 1. So I think I had 18. So if you want on the first finger, which this red one's the first finger, I'm doing 18 now. But if you have narrower fingers, then you'll do 16 instead. And then you'll just overlap 1. And then you'll do, let's see, how many have I got here? Yeah, I'm doing 9 instead of it being 9. Then you'll need to take out 1 and make it 8. So 8, 8, and the pinky stays the same, 8 and 8. So it's 16 and 8s, and the pinky stays the same on it. It doesn't change. So we're going to get started. But this is just a general idea. This is the first finger. This is the middle finger, ring finger, pinky finger, ring finger, middle finger. And that gives you a general idea. And as you'll notice, it's slightly offset from your starting and center point over here. So I'm going to take my rubber bands off and we'll get started. I am using for this project the Red Heart Unforgettable candied colored, but the stained glass is really nice, and they have several in the Unforgettable, and it's in the Boutique series, and it's really nice. It's got a gradual color change, and so it really has a nice effect to it. So let's get started. What you're going to do, you're going to take your first peg and you're going to draw a string cast on flat 18 pegs. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18. Let me make sure. Yep, 18. Then we're going to come back and toss every other loop over. And so it's a set of short rows to do the fingers. So now we're going to toss every other loop over. And this drawstring cast on is the top. It's the tip of the finger, and it's the easiest way to tighten the top casting and be able to sew it up. Okay, so now we're going to do a flat knit, and we are going to knit the first finger for a total of 29 rows. And so you're going to go back and forth for 29 rows. So this is row 1. Go back, and this is row 2. And you will continue this for a total of 29 rows. That should end you over here so that you can continue on. And we're going to go around working on the fingers. So go ahead and pause the video and get your 29 rows done on your first finger. Okay, we finished our 29 rows, so there is our first finger. And as you'll notice, the pinky doesn't have a side seam, and the index finger doesn't. They only have seams on the inside. So that way you get the illusion that it's all one piece rather than having to sew it together. So here is where it can get a little challenging, and we will be doing a couple of rows of peg doubling later on once all our fingers are done. And so what we're going to do is we're going to lift up that end peg, lift up the next one, place them both on the last peg. Now we're going to draw string cast on flat 9 pegs. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. Go back around. You'll notice I didn't cut the yarn. I don't cut the yarn until I'm absolutely done with the glove, because you don't need to cut the yarn. The drawstring will give you the space between the fingers. So now we're going to take those 9 pegs that we just drawstring cast on, and we're going to do them for 33 rows flat back and forth, and this is the middle finger that we're doing, and we're only doing the front half or the back half. We're doing a half of the middle finger. So you're just going to go back and forth on those 9 pegs for 33 rows. And then when you've done your 33 rows, what you're going to do is you're going to take these that you just moved, and you're going to move them back one at a time. The top one goes back, and the next one goes back, so that when you start doing the multi-stitches on one peg, it's easier to keep up with as it's in order that you would do it. So when you're done with your 33, you move the top loop back over, then the next loop back over, and then you're going to do the same thing when you're done to move those 2 loops over to here, and then you're going to do another 9 pegs. And you're going to keep doing this shuffling on these end stitches like this, just moving over 2. And you're going to continue this all the way around, and that's going to include moving these end ones over here on the index. And so that's basically how you go in to make the fingers. And so again, you move them in order back, and then you move those 2 into, and then do 9, and then move those 2 back to the end peg, move 2 over, and then you're going to do 16 or 14. I don't have the pattern in front of me. And then you're going to do the 2. So you move the 2 over all the way over like that. And then you'll end up doing it over here. So go ahead and pause the video and follow the instructions on the pattern for how many rows for each finger. Here is what the finger section should look like. Your starting out should be longer and fatter, and then the middle finger on either side of that fat section should be longer, and then the next section will be a little shorter, which is just your ring finger, your middle finger, and your first finger, and then here's your pinky over here. And that's what it should look like underneath. Now, what it should look like up top is the great thing about using multicolors, you can see what's going on. Okay, there's my first 18, and then I have my two pegs, my two stitches that I moved, stacked on top of the first stitch for the middle finger. So there's two stitches there. Then I have over to the end of the middle finger, and I have two stitches that are on top of the first stitch for the ring finger. And then I go to the end of the ring finger, and there's the two stitches on top of the first stitch for the pinky. Two stitches to the end stitches are on the top of the first stitch for the ring finger on the other side, and then two stitches on top of the middle finger first stitch on the opposite side. And the tricky part you may find when you were coming to this last one is what I did was I moved these two loops over to here temporarily, and then I did my middle finger. That way I didn't have to worry about any stitches or messing with them or anything. Then what I did is I took the two end stitches on my middle finger on the opposite side, pulled them back to put these back in place, and then put those on top of the first stitch on the first finger so that everything looked uniform, being at the beginning of two stitches being at the beginning of each finger that starts the stitch. And as I said, it's easier to see when you're working with a multicolored yarn what you're doing. So at this point, we are going to be moving on to where we develop our glove into working this section of the hand here. So we're going to be working this section, and it's going to be 30 rows, but we got to set it up. Okay, so what we're going to do is we're going to skip that first one, which is fine, but that's going to be our starting point. We're just going to skip it this first time. So what you're going to do is you're going to knit over 17, so there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15. Excuse me, 15, because we've got things stacked on top of each other. So we skip the first one, which would be 16, and then 17, 18 out of these two. So we go over 15. And then what we're going to do is we're going to knit those two stitches together. Then we're going to do, so in the pattern it should say knit the top two together, and then you're going to do peg doubling. So then you're going to move that stitch over to the previous peg, and then you're going to knit that stitch right there. Then you're going to take this and you're going to put it back where it was, and then you're going to knit over 3, 4, 5, 6, and then you're going to knit the top two stitches together, move to peg doubling, so move that to the previous peg, and then toss the bottom loop over and move the stitch back. And then you're going to go 5 more. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, excuse me, 6. You're going to go 6 over. Then you're going to toss, then you're going to bring those 2 loops together, and then you're going to do a peg doubling. So move that to the previous peg. Knit the next stitch. Move that back. Then you're going to knit over to the next section, which is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. You're going to knit those top 2 together. Then you're going to peg double up, which means move that stitch to the previous peg. Knit the bottom one over and move that stitch back. Knit over 6. Knit the top 2 stitches together. Move to the previous peg for peg doubling. Knit the next one. And then we're getting back to that skipped peg. So over 6. Then knit those top 2 together. Bring that loop to the previous peg for peg doubling and toss that bottom loop over. Then we're going to move that back. Now we're going to do a complete row where we do the peg doubling, because what we're doing is we're creating the space in here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go around one more row and I'm going to peg double on these where I knit the top, move it over, knit the bottom and move it back all the way around. And then what I'm going to do next is just knit, flat knit all the way around for 30 rows. So what you want to do, one more row, go around, and on the 2 stitch pegs, peg double up. So knit the top stitch, move to the previous peg, knit the bottom stitch and move that stitch that you moved back. Then go all the way around on that, and then what you're going to do is you're just going to knit. You don't have to do any more peg doubling. So when you knit the next row, you're going to toss both loops over so that you're back down to 56 stitches. And then you're going to go around for 30 rows, and then we'll work on the thumb, which is going to be in here. So go ahead and pause the video and complete that much. Okay, part of my voice here, I'm getting over being sick. So we're fixing to start on the thumb area. And what you want to do that is you want to knit 4. So 1, 2, 3, 4. Now on the next 10 pegs, you're going to be working flat in short rows. And you're going to knit 10 for 55 rows. So let's count over. So we're going to go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Then you're going to switch and go back, counting over. So here's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. And you're going to go back the other direction. And you're going to continue this for a total of 55 rows. And it should look like one long strand showing up. And this will be your thumb. Okay, we've finished our thumb, as you can see right here. And we should have finished going this way. What we're going to do to make sewing easier later on is we're going to bring these outer stitches, bring the original loops on these outer pegs back. And how you're going to do that is you go to the next unworked peg and you follow it back, and you'll see the bridge. Hopefully you can see this. You'll see there's a ladder there connecting your stitches, which means that this right here, in a little bit of a different color, is your original loop. So you're going to take and bring it back on the end peg like that. There. Then you're going to do the same thing on the other side. You'll go to the previous peg, follow the ladder back, and there you can see is your next stitch. So you want to bring that stitch back onto the end peg. And that makes it a lot easier when sewing to sew it up. It's already lined up, so all you have to do is put a seam through the sides. Okay, now we are continuing the process, and what we're going to do is we're going to knit all the way around back to our starting point. Okay, at this point, you're just going to knit circularly for 10 rows, and that gets you this little section here. And when you look at the hand, it starts to get smaller around here. So we're going to knit for 10 rows, which will get us through here. And then we're going to start working on knitting flat and decreasing so that it fits nicely around the wrist. So go ahead and pause the video and complete those 10 rows, and then we'll get started on finishing up the glove, which is really easy. Okay, we have finished those 10 rows, which was in here. And now we're ready to start a decrease section here that you're going to sew up. And the reason why we do this section is so that when you wear it, it actually snugly goes down and fits around the wrist. Nice and neat. So, what we're going to do to get that started is we're going to knit over 9. There's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, and 9. Okay, at this point we're going to be working back and forth, and we're going to go ahead and decrease. So we're going to decrease there, because that's the last one we finished, and then we're going to decrease over here. And that'll make it real easy to keep up with how you're working. So you're going to knit all the way around after you've just got done decreasing, and then you're going to knit another row. So you're going to knit all the way around. Okay. Now that we have done the decreasing, now we're just going to go back and we're going to do a regular knit row. And so you're going to repeat what we're doing with these last two rows, where you decrease on the ends on one row and then you do a regular row. And you're going to do this until you're down to 46 stitches, and then we're going to switch to a rib stitch to finish off the cuff area, and then I'll show you how to cast off where you have some give. So go ahead and pause the video and complete it up to the point where you will have 46 stitches left. And remember, you're decreasing on the ends for one row, and then for the second row you're just going to do a regular knit. So go ahead and pause the video, get that much done, and then we will finish up our glove. Okay, we have finished our decreasing of 10 pegs, as you can see here, and now we're ready to go to our last section, which is here. It's our ribbing. We're going to do 10 rows of it, and then we're going to bind off, which means we are on the downhill run of making a glove. The last bit, of course, is sewing up, and there is some important information on telling you how to sew it. So let's finish this up. I've already gone ahead and done 8 rows, so I'm going to show you the last rows, 2 rows, because they're the same. And then you'll just pause the video after these last 2 rows. So what we're going to do is we're going to knit 3. Then we're going to purl 2. Knit 3. Purl 2, and you're going to do this all the way around. Okay, on the last 3 pegs, you're going to do your purl 2, but then you're going to be in off by 1 on the pattern of knit 5, purl 2. On that last one, you're just going to purl it. And then you're going to purl it again and head the way back. So then it's purl 2, knit 3 all the way to the other side. So there's our purl 2, knit 3. And do this all the way to the other side. You're going to do this for a total of 10 rows. And then we're going to cast off and get ready to start sewing. Okay, now I am ready to start casting off or binding off, and I'm going to do something similar to It's pretty much what Denise does from Loom a Hat on one of her tutorials on a cast off, and I find that it's great. It's not too stretchy, but doesn't make the end look too odd because you used a super stretchy bind off. So this is kind of a somewhere in between. And so what I'm going to do is wrap the first two, move that second one in over to the outer one, toss the bottom loop over, move that loop over one. Then you're going to wrap them, take the inner loop, move it to the outer, toss the bottom loop over, move over, and wrap both. Toss both loops over, move that previous loop to the end loop, toss the bottom loop over, move over, wrap two, toss both loops over, take that previous loop, put it on the end loop, toss the bottom loop over, move over. And you're going to do this all the way around. So go ahead and pause the video, complete that much, and then I'll show you some tips on how to sew up your glove. Okay, it's time for the tips on sewing up. On the side here, you're just going to sew up. Nothing special, just sew up there. On the fingers is where it gets important. I'm going to turn it inside out because that's how you're going to need to sew it up. When sewing up the fingers, on the thumb, find it where it's exactly even. And what you're going to have to do, and this is going to take some effort, is you're not going to find the first column and sew it. You got to find that very, very edge right there. You see that? That's the edge you got to find on both sides, and that is where you have to sew from. Because if you don't, the finger will be snugger than you like. So you're going to have to sew from those very edges on both sides all the way around on the thumb, and the same for the fingers. Now, the fingers I did in such a way that your first and pinky are already together. The ones that are separated are your middle and your ring. Now, because I didn't make any cuts, I'm going to snip those areas in half. And you're going to see what I'm going to do by snipping them in half. And this will keep you in line when you go to sew up, which is the reason why I'm doing this too. Snip in half. Okay, now this is our pinky, and so we're going to pick up that end on that side and that end on that side, and we're going to tie them together. And that way we know our pinky. And as I said, this keeps it lined up so that you aren't having areas go off center and you're sewing your ring finger to your middle finger on your other side. This keeps you in line. So I tied that together. Then I move over to the next. I find that piece. I find that one. And as I can see, here's my ring and my ring. And I tie those together. As I said, this makes it easier to keep up with what finger's what. You don't have crossing over and all that, because that can get complicated. Let me cut that. Okay. And that one doesn't actually have a connector on the other side. But that's okay. Now, what I also like to do up here is drawstring my fingers together as much as possible and tie the tops. And that way, that doesn't get confusing either. Which finger's which. I like to make life easy and not have to sit there and double and triple check things. Just find ways to make it easier to just see what you're doing and do it. So, I'm going to tie my ring finger up. And that way my middle fingers are tied up with no confusion. Okay. Now, you will have to do the same thing that you do on the thumb. You've got to find that very end stripping, like right there. As you can see, is right there. You have to find that on both sides, and that is where you're sewing together, so that your fingers are at full size. And if you sew it right, that is how wide the finger should be, which should look about that fat. And you want it to be. And you want to sew it down like that all the way around. You want to find that very tip edge right there and sew that up all the way around. Now, once you do that, your glove is done. Once you sew up this and the thumb and your fingers up here, you make another one just like it, and you're done. That's how you make a glove on a fine gauge loom. That's it.